200-mile round trip to get to the grocery store. We're preppers by nature. We're not doing it because it's trendy. We're not doing it out of fear. It's a way of living. We're all prepared for maybe not getting out of here for several months at a time. You see? Yeah. See that dimple right there? The bear's trying to get in. My mom had one in her house.
So how many homesteaders and off-grid types would you say live out here hidden in these woods?
We have quite a few. Then there's Dapper Dan. He lived off-grid forever, and I mean, I'm not sure Dan ever went to a grocery store. There's rumors that he used to eat pigeons.
The people around here are just trying to be as self-sufficient as possible, and the government wants to stifle your way of life, is that right?
Yes.
Most people grow their own food around here?
Many do.
Rockhopper here, and today I'm with Toni up in the UP of Michigan, and today we're going to learn what the government is trying to do to stifle the self-sufficient and homesteader way of living up here with rezoning that could drastically, really, alter their lifestyle in a bad way.
Grand Marais is a quaint, out-of-the-way town beside Lake Superior in the UP of Michigan. At first glance, people think it an idyllic setting, but residents here endure extreme remoteness, brutal winters, smothering the land in snow and wielding frigid winds that seem to slice exposed skin like a razor. The town's roughly 450 inhabitants have become accustomed to it and have grown to expect it. This small, unassuming place is home to several people who came here to get away from life in the bigger cities and live a more back-to-the-land lifestyle by growing their own food, raising their own animals such as chickens, and supplementing their diet with game gathered by fishing and hunting. Everything seemed to be going fine, but what they didn't see coming was a set of ordinances drawn up by officials that could drastically affect those living a way of life that they came here to create.
So what is going on here, Toni?
I moved here 13 years ago to escape the trials and tribulations of living in a highly populated area. Much like most highly populated areas of the country, the world, there's a lot of laws and restrictions that come with that. And Grand Marais has always been one of those places where the community is pretty much able to take care of itself, move forward in a kind and respectful manner, work together, support each other, and find ways to communally work our issues out. Unfortunately, we were introduced a zoning ordinance plan in the last 30 days that defies everything we've ever been here and everything we've ever believed, to the point of being a homeowner association type of restrictive set of ordinances that just don't fit this community. Hard-hitting, heavy rules that are going to keep some of us from living the lifestyle we're accustomed to living, and even beyond that, even introducing unnecessary ordinances that don't even apply to this area of the country.
Most people up here, they come to get away from the city and the restrictions and all the laws, and they want to be freer, right? So they're up here basically living more of an off-grid lifestyle, more of a homesteader lifestyle. They're growing their own food. Maybe they supplement that with some hunting or fishing and whatnot. And so now the government wants to come in and say, hey, no, you can't do that anymore? Is this what's happening?
There are a lot of those elements in the zoning ordinances that have been introduced to us. Examples being restrictions on open fires, which, if you know anything about the UP, we're a campfire kind of a place. Restrictions on supplementing your heat with the popular contained outdoor wood-burning stoves. There's ordinances against greenhouses in certain districts. My particular operation, we've been a commercial property since the 1950s, 60s, and they're telling me that I'm not a commercial property, and through the ordinances they'll tell me what can happen on my property from this day forward. I think that the current ordinances, would they go forward, almost everything I do on my property is out of compliance, and one of the ordinances is that I come into compliance as soon as possible. We're a cute little country store, and we support local artists, and we garden, and we put as much of our garden in the freezer as possible, as much as the UP will allow us to. We don't have a very long growing season. It's tough to grow up here, but we really try to take care of ourselves as much as possible. We have quite a few chickens in the current zoning ordinance. We're restricted to 12 per property, which is senseless. I mean, you can't have 12 chickens in our downtown neighborhood per property, but yet I'm restricted to 12 out here as well. Our township of Burt, in which the village of Grand Marais is inside, is 240 square miles. They've taken a cookie cutter set of ordinances and applied it to our entire 240 square miles. I don't know why they think that this will fit our community, because it doesn't in any way. There's been verbiage that they're setting up ordinances that will protect us in the future, but we see it as gross overreach and unnecessary. We have our planning commission who's been charged with working on the zoning ordinance. They did our master plan, and I don't know how they got so maybe off track, if you will, but I am not sure that the planning commission even knew there was an option to maybe say no, because I believe that there's some on that very planning commission that would speak up and say, no, I don't really think this fits this community. I don't think there's a solely responsible person or entity. I think it's maybe something that snowballed and took on a life of its own. And maybe it's time to reel that back and say, no, this isn't exactly what this community needs. And I know it's been expensive, but I think sometimes learning is expensive.
What do people intend to do to fight the government rezoning?
We just had our open meeting that the Planning Commission, that's part of the Planning Commission's process to move the zoning ordinances forward. There was a lot of pushback at that meeting, a lot of questions, a lot of people expressing that maybe this wasn't the solution for Grand Marais, that we needed something a little less hard-hitting. So I don't know what will happen next. I fully intend to defend myself and defend my commercial property. I don't know where it will go from here, but I don't think the community is done voicing their opinion.
And if for some reason this goes through, people's ability to be free and live their life in a more self-sufficient or off-grid or homestead way will be compromised. Is that correct?
Well, I hope not. I hope that they'll come to a conclusion that isn't a blanket policy for the whole 240 square miles of the township of Burt. I hope that they'll see that while some people don't even think there should be any rules in the downtown area, I'm not one to say that maybe there shouldn't be. Maybe they're not even necessary. I don't know anybody who even has a duck anymore in the downtown area. There used to be a lady who had a pet duck. And I don't think there's poultry anywhere in the downtown area. That we need some rural. There's not one piece of rural zoning in the entire township of Burt if they move forward with this. And I'm just afraid that going down this avenue will only open us up to more laws, more zoning, more ordinances, more restrictions that we can't police. And that just leave it open for a lot of complaining, a lot of why aren't you supporting this ordinance, maybe even lawsuits. Why do we need to go there? Our community just doesn't need it.
Do you think that people's ability to grow and raise their own food would be compromised if this rezoning went through?
If they don't make any changes to what they presented us at the open meeting, yeah.
That would decrease people's ability to be self-sufficient and sustainable in this community.
It would. And it's not just that, it's small businesses. We need the ability to be able to grow here. There seems to be this deep fear that people here would sell out to commercial entities, and I just don't see that happening. At least not in the lifetime of anybody sitting in that room at the open meeting. Would it happen someday? Maybe, and should we protect against that? Possibly. They overestimate the traffic here. They overestimate the desire or the economic value for some commercial entity to be here. There isn't one. Our 450 full-time residents can't keep the businesses supported that we have now.
And that's where tourism comes in.
And that's where tourism comes in. And that's why that is our industry. And that's how the gas station stays open. That's how the grocery store stays open. That's how I stay open. Because the 450 residents here can't possibly keep us open year round.
Tell me that story about the Dollar General. Somebody was worried you're going to put a Dollar General?
That was mentioned when I stood up and defended my commercial property in the open meeting. The comment was made, well, what if someday you want to sell your property to a Dollar General? First of all, that's not my nature. That's not what I would want to happen to my property. On the flip side, I also can't have them telling me that I can't someday put offices in my building or someday have a farm-to-table restaurant in my building. Wouldn't that be amazing? Currently, I can't do that if I go to sell my property. In the current zoning as of today, I can't do that. We have put a lot of money into this property. We've improved it so much. I wish you could have seen it when we started. I mean, I have a commercial well and I pay commercial taxes and I pay commercial liability insurance and I can go on and on. I have no intentions of selling my property to a Dollar General. And there's absolutely no way, if you did an economic feasibility study, that any Dollar General is going to approach me to purchase this piece of property.
How many people would you say are in the off-grid and homestead type community around here, roughly?
I know there's at least 7 of us that would fit underneath that category. How many I don't know of. I'm sure there's more. In fact, as soon as I said that, I thought of a young couple west. Oh, and another young man west. So there's 9. It's becoming quite the place in the country to be able to do that, to be able to live that lifestyle. The organization that's helping our Township Board and Planning Commission with the new zoning ordinances, they are a governmental agency. I think it's Central Upper Peninsula Planning and Development, something along those lines. I don't have the exact title correct. They're making recommendations that just don't fit us at all.
Right, so they're basically bringing what might be considered more city type values to the country?
Yeah, it's very cookie cutter. It's very taken from somewhere that's just not us and tried to apply to us. We have a current zoning ordinance and maybe it doesn't have all of the elements that it needs, but it's much closer to what we need up here to allow the freedoms, especially these young folks coming in. I mean, they're our future. This country needs a food revolution. It needs to learn how to be more self-sustaining, grow its own food, raise its own animals. And limiting these kids is hurting us. I think that when QPAD first got here, when they started helping our community with their master plan, the woman that was our advisor at the time called us a lawless community. And that's so far from the truth. People here are hunting, fishing, logging, outdoors people who follow the laws, who follow the rules. We have Eagle up here. We have the DNR up here. We're not lawless. And the laws that we have are followed. And these people are kind. And they're just wanting to live their life.
How do you think, if these rezoning laws go through, how do you think all that will affect the people up here?
Well, first of all, I know that it's going to be really hard on their spirit. Second, I feel like it's turning the community into something that we were never intended to be. And third, I don't even know how they could possibly enforce all these ordinances. And the stress on the community financially to try to enforce the ordinances that are unnecessary to start with, I can't fathom that's even doable.
So it would negatively affect a lot of people's way of life up here.
I think it would. I'm of the opinion that it would. You came here, whoever you might be, because you loved it here, because you looked around and you saw how glorious it was, and that it's not overpopulated, and that the people here are open and kind and welcoming. That's why you came here. And to be fair, all these things that they're wanting to control came here first. Our desire to be a less stressful society was here first. Our desire to be an outdoors culture was here first. Our desire to be able to park a boat in our yard was here first. Our desire to live off the land and try to chisel out a life for yourself, make your own business, start your own small business, all that was here first. Our snowmobiles were here first. You know, they started in the 1960s when the snowmobile culture started. They have supported us through the winter for decades, literally decades, 60, 70 years. It's maybe not my favorite part, but it's part of it. It was here first. And to take that away will elementally change this community. If we didn't have that, for instance, we didn't have it last winter because we didn't have a good winter. Our businesses, which we have to have, are reaching out for loans and government assistance. They were hurting, and it was offered. We have to have that. It's an elemental piece. And if you came here after the culture was already developed, don't try to change us. Maybe you made a poor choice. Maybe you shouldn't be here. Maybe you should be somewhere else. And we don't resent that or resent you personally, but we do resent being fundamentally and culturally asked to change.
And people should make no mistake, because life is hard here, right?
That's the other thing that's so funny. My guy, we talk about this a lot. We talk a lot, and he says, relax. This always goes in waves. All the people that are moving here that are bringing their past culture into our culture, they won't stay. They find out how hard it is to live here. We get 250 to 300 inches of snow every winter. Our wind blows off of a frigid lake. We have snow drifts. We have frozen pipes. We have a lot that we deal with. We lose our power a lot. You have to have backup power up here. We have a lot of challenges, not to mention that it's expensive. We don't have medical care. We don't have veterinarians. We don't have a dog pound. I was asked that once, that one of the locals' dog was loose, which doesn't happen very often. You don't see dogs running around up here loose. We know the threat to a dog if it's running through the woods loose. A lot can happen. People keep their pets under control. But this man walked up to me and said, well, I need a dog pound. This dog is loose. And I laughed. We don't have that kind of thing up here, and we don't need it. This community knows how to take care of itself. And we have one thing that keeps us financially afloat, economically on top, and that's our tourists. We don't resent our tourists. We welcome our tourists. We want them to respect what we have here. We want them to take care of the woods as we take care of the woods. We don't want them leaving their beer cans or any of their trash out. We don't want them dumping their campers on the side of the road. We want respect, but we can't live without them.
So what kind of chickens are you raising here?
Well, this cage right here, this is some of our babies. And they are mottled Houdans, and then I'm working on my own little breed, and I can't tell you everything about it, but I can tell you that both of these are designed for the cold UP winters, both of these breeds.
And do you get quite a few eggs out of your chickens?
We do about 7,000 eggs a year. That's about where we are. Of course, we keep a lot. We store a lot of those for our own use, but we sell a lot to the locals as well.
Now, do you eat the meat?
We do. We process our roosters. So our excess roosters, they're in traveling coops right now. I let them out every evening so they can forage, and we're trying to get their weights up because they will go in the freezer.
And everything that you grow is grown as environmentally friendly as possible?
I love the term better than organic. We're beyond organic. We don't use anything that shouldn't be used on our food. We don't use any chemicals. We don't use chemical fertilizers. We don't use herbicides, pesticides, nothing. We use all natural means of keeping our chickens healthy. We use diatomaceous earth to keep mites and lice down. We feed them the best that we can afford to feed them. I don't necessarily use organic because I'm not sure about those feeds, as well as it's extremely expensive. We let them free range as much as we can. We're going to start cleaning up this garden here in just the next week or two, and they're going to have at it. They're going to be really happy chickens.
Hey, what do you have in this coop here?
So this is our Welsomer cockerel pen, and these boys, at least one will be saved for breeding purposes. The others will either find a homestead home where they'll go help produce somebody else some really nice usable chickens. They're a heritage breed. They are known for being able to be used for meat as well as eggs, of course. They lay a beautiful, dark, rich red egg. The way I got to know them is I read an article years ago. They are called the zombie apocalypse chickens. And they are the chicken most likely to help us live through a zombie apocalypse. I believe that because they free range fantastic. They take very good care of themselves. And I actually watched my original rooster take on a great horned owl and get rid of it. They're amazing. I love them. One of my favorite, if not my favorite breed.
Well, that's a happy rooster.
That's a crowing rooster. They start about 4:30 in the morning. It's great.
So you grow a lot of your own food, right?
We try to. Understanding we all have wonderful dreams of our harvests when we move to the UP, and she gives you what she wants you to have. We only get what we can grow inside of 90 days. We have a gift this year of having a really nice September, so we'll probably have a little bit more this year. We grow as much as we can. It gets canned, it goes into the freezer, whatever way that we can find to preserve it. What we can't grow, we reach out to other local farmers and buy from them. So we share our bounty.
Okay, so sometimes you do a little bit of a trade.
We have been known to trade, certainly. We have a wonderful farm up here that offers a CSA, and there's several of us that share the driving responsibility to pick up our CSA. That goes in the freezer as well. Some of that we eat right away. We have local farms that do a lot of meat production. We try to support them and try to buy from them and fill our freezers and can and be as self-sustaining as we possibly can. He is a happy boy.
Can you explain what a CSA is?
A CSA is where you buy into a share of a garden at the beginning of the year. Our CSA is with Furlong Creek Farm, and she provides us with a basket of vegetables every Tuesday all summer long. I think it's May 15th to October 15th. The variety is great.
Do you feel there's a real sense of community here?
Beyond probably what I could even express. If you have a problem, there'll be 10 people there ready to help you. If you get stuck in the sand, if you're stuck in the snow, if you need out, if there's a medical emergency, we work entirely on a volunteer medical team and a volunteer fire department. And there are people here that have taken classes that know how to help, and they help as much as they can until you're in a place where somebody with more qualifications can help you. Yes, there is an extreme sense of community here. We just lost my partner's 97-year-old mom, August 15th. And the community that gathered around us during that time, I just can't even explain. The sense of community here is is tremendous.
So it's really hard work. It's difficult to live here. It's expensive. The winters are very harsh. But the trade-off is you have really good people here.
Yeah, we have really good people here. And we live in a really beautiful place that really needs to remain just the way it is.
And just touching on winter for a sec, it does get to -40 here, right?
It can. I have to be honest with you, it's probably more of a snow challenge and a wind chill challenge here. We do moderate a little bit because the lake, while it's very cold, can also moderate us to where we're not getting down into below zero for a long length of time. Really, the lake is the boss. And if the wind shifts in off the lake, it's whiteouts. It's brutal.
So the wind here, that's the real killer.
Yeah, it's all about the wind. It really is. You can have 3 seasons in a day as the wind shifts. We can have fog roll in. A lot of people aren't a fan of the fog. I love it. I think it's kind of romantic and mysterious, and it just really adds an element that most places don't have. You can have a beautiful summer day and the wind can shift and you can have fog roll in and change the whole thing.
Yeah, even in the summer, I've just seen out of nowhere just wind come in.
Yep.
And turn what was a fairly calm lake into what looks to be an ocean.
Yeah, yeah. She really is an ocean. She's really an inland ocean. And the weather effect is something you really can't even explain. This is my little store, my little country store. This is where we have our consigners. We have a lot of art consigners in our store, as well as this is where I sell my eggs and baked goods. We are different than the other stores in town. We don't have t-shirts and ball caps. We really have a lot of eclectic artsy items.
And you stay open all year because you do have food and beverages and things, right?
Yep, we do stay open all year. We have an SDM liquor license with the state of Michigan. We have fine wines and craft beers. We also have some snack items. We have gifts, cards, things that people need on an everyday basis.
You were telling me about food suppliers in this area, and that includes the Amish community, right?
It does include the Amish community, and we work closely with them. They're a great source of good food. They're a source of building materials. In addition to, we have a lovely hardware store who we also work very closely with, and it's a mom and pop hardware store, and we try to support them as much as we can. Our Amish community is fairly new to the UP. I'd say they're working on maybe 10 years here. They're a great resource. I'm really glad they're here.
You were telling me about school islands or island schools or something like that. Can you elaborate on that?
I can. I don't know that I'll get this all 100% accurate. Our school has somewhere around 38 students. We belong to what's called like an island school district. So our kids actually sometimes travel by plane, sometimes travel by boat to get to the other members of that school district to play sports. And most of those sports are co-ed, but you know what? Our kids get that opportunity. What other high school or even junior high kid gets to take a plane to play a basketball game? It's a pretty special community up here.
Tell me what's going on with preppers up here.
It always puts a really big smile on my face when we talk about preppers in the UP. We're preppers by nature. We're not doing it because it's trendy. We're not doing it out of fear. It's a way of living. It's how we do things up here. You have to have a storage of food up here. If you use a Meijer or another commercial type grocery store, we're talking about a 200-mile round trip to get to the grocery store. We all store our food up here. We're all prepared for maybe not getting out of here for several months at a time. It's our way of life. Another kind of prepperish thing we do up here is we're prepared if something would happen that we would need milk. We have the ability to do goat's milk. No one has pulled the trigger just because it's a lot of work. I used to work on a goat farm and it's a lot of work, but we do have the ability to cover that if we need to. We do have a milk source if we need it. No one up here any longer has dairy cattle. We lost that decades ago. We lost most of our farmland to the national park. When the national park came in, they used our farmland as the buffer zone. So we don't really have cattle, but we can take care of ourselves.
You guys have been living this way of life for a long time, and you know how to do it, and
Yep.
you're survivors, right?
Yes, we're survivors for sure. And we love living here and wouldn't have it any other way.
So even though you do have grid power, you still have a generator or generators, is that right?
Absolutely. We're not only at the end of the power supply, but we're at the end of a power supply that travels hundreds of miles from its source. We're on Alger Delta, and that's the counties that it's in, and Delta County is all the way on the other side down on Lake Michigan towards Escanaba, and we are literally at the end of the road, the last one on this power grid. So there's a lot that can happen between point A and point B, or probably actually point Z, but there's a lot that can happen between here and there, and we do lose power quite a bit. And now, having said that, our power company is amazing. The guys get out there and work in unbelievable conditions to get our power back on, but we have to always be prepared, and we are. Grand Marais has kind of its own little grid, if you will, in that we are on a town well, and we are on septic systems. So our town well, when the power goes down, that town well is on its own generator, and it has to be monitored continuously to keep the water safe in our community. So we have a lot of challenges when it comes to power, but everybody here knows how to take care of it. We also have cell service challenges, but that's okay. It's the way it should be up here. You don't come up here to sit on your cell phone. And if you're needing to have Wi-Fi, you make concessions so that you do. We do have work from home kind of people that live up here.
Tell me about your house here.
The house has been an 11-year project. It started out as one of the cabins that came off of Sable Lake when the national park took over the lake. There were some parameters around how long the cabins could stay there, and that's a long sordid story of its own. But that's how this cabin arrived here on this property. It was lived in by Mr. LeClaire, who was a fisherman out on the lake. He's the one that built the main building that you're seeing today. As I may have shared with you, this has been a gas station. It's been a party store. For many years, it was used as the fisheries, and that's our historical name, Grand Marais Fisheries Farm and Mercantile. The fisheries was where they tied their nets. They brought their fish in and processed it. They smoked the fish, and they sold the fish out of the back room. You would come by here and you would see thousands of seagulls here because they were waiting for the fish scraps. And still to this day, a couple times a year, we'll look out and our peak will be lined with seagulls. And I think it's descendants of those original seagulls. I guess what's been passed down to them, their sonar or whatever they have tells them that there should be food here. But there's not anymore, of course. That's really the history of the property. We've worked on the house quite a bit. It's in its final phases of being completed, but it has literally been an 11-year project.
So it was in pretty rough shape when you got it, would you say?
John bought it in 2011. I moved into it in 2013. And when John bought it, it was rough. He did a lot of the original work on it, and it was just a 2-room cabin at that point. We now have 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, etc., etc., and we've developed the property a lot. But yeah, it was rough. The gentleman heated with coal oil, and that can really affect a building. He lived a very rustic life. He was quite a character, quite a fisherman.
I can see you're in the process of restoring this, building it up to the way you like it. Tell me a little bit more about that.
This is our final phase. We just had to redo the roof line because of snow load. The front portion you see is you need a big entryway in the UP because you're going to have a lot of snow, a lot of wet clothing, as well as we grow a lot of our own vegetables. So inside of this room right here, I'll just take you in here real quick. Inside of this room here, there will be a tall storage cabinet and then a long a long countertop with a huge garden sink in it to process our vegetables, start cleaning vegetables. This whole wall here will be coat hooks and boot racks and a boot bench, because we live at least 50% of our life in wet, snowy clothing. And this is our last bit. I won't take you on in the house today, but we have if you walk right in here, this was the original cabin. We built on the south side where our living room is, and we have a walk-in closet because most of our clothes are really big. So we do have a walk-in closet, nice big kitchen, and a spare bedroom. We're in process.
Yeah, I can see the chipboard floor here.
Yep.
And I'm sure it'll look good when it's all completed.
It will. It's going to be lovely, and it's well worth it. We've had a stinky bear again. You can see where the claw went in and see where they pulled.
Okay, so that,
Yep.
this is where the bear tried to...
Can you see?
Yeah.
See that
yeah.
dimple right there?
Right. So that's the bear trying to get in.
That's the bear's trying to get in.
Well, he didn't get in.
No, it's usually Zane, I think, that scares him off. We had it happen on the other end down here too, just not real long ago as well. And if you look, that screen is currently gone because we have it pulled out so we can fix it. The gate was not up at the time. And what they're trying to get into the chicken feed. They smell the feed. They're not after the chickens. They're just really after the feed. We've had them all the way in the barn before this barn was built. In my smaller barn, we had them get all the way in. Made a mess. Ate the feed. Didn't kill any chickens. They're part of the life up here, and you do have to be careful. We don't feed birds. None of our trash is accessible. My mom had one in her house, I believe it was last spring. Twice. It came in twice on their all seasons porch, so they had the DNR come and trap it and take it away. It's dangerous for them. It's also dangerous for the bears to live that lifestyle. So they move them to somewhere where they won't have as much people access.
And you really don't want to feed birds here, because if you're feeding birds, you're feeding bears too, right?
You sure are, yeah. And it's a bummer because our birds are amazing. We have an amazing variety of birds up here. And you want to bring them in and you want to see them, but it's dangerous for everybody.
And you can't keep bees here, can you?
I opted not to for right now. We had 3 years of bad bear experiences with our bees. We bought the building up front hoping maybe we could house bees in it someday. We would actually do like PVC tubes in, and there would be walls between the bees and the bears. That's a big endeavor, and I've decided not to do it right now. What we did find, and I learned this from other beekeepers, and not necessarily honeybees, but other wild beekeepers, is that once the honeybees are gone, the native bees take over and will take over the pollinating for you. They're actually a little bit more effective pollinators than honeybees are, because honeybees are very graceful. The wild bees are not as graceful, and they tend to spread a little bit more pollen than the honeybees do. Having said that, we still do some hand pollination here, particularly in the squash family. We'll do it ourselves to make sure we get sizable and enough squash.
But the bears go for not just the honey, but they want to eat the larva?
They are actually... It's larva first. The honey is a great dessert, but it's larva first. They're looking for the protein and fat out of that larva.
Some nice bee larva with a topping of honey.
With the topping of honey.
Is delightful.
Yep, they've got it all.
So in these woods here, back in the woods, I've heard there are a lot of people who are living off-grid and homesteading. Can you tell me about some of these people?
Well, I can give you a little bit of a historical perspective. Remember, I told you we're at the end of the electric line right here, and there are a lot of houses out east of us who are off-grid. There's some lovely people that we have known for years out there. We know a family that raised 3 girls out off the grid. We currently have good friends that live out there, and then there's Dapper Dan. Let me tell you the story about Dan. Bless him. He is a wonderful man. He's now in a home, unfortunately, but he lived off-grid forever. And I mean, I'm not sure Dan ever went to a grocery store. I'm sure people dropped supplies off to him, but he lived with his chickens, and he lived with what he grew and what he foraged out of the forest. And He's quite the myth. He's quite the man, the legend. Yes, there are a lot of people that still live off grid up here.
Was Dan the most self-sufficient guy you've ever known?
Maybe. I mean, there's rumors that he used to eat pigeons. Maybe, I don't know. But he was certainly self-sufficient. He was a great UP Grand Marais character, great legend, and I'm sure he'll be followed by many more to come.
And this seems like a good place for people like him.
It's the perfect place. We have quite a few chickens. In the zoning ordinance, we're restricted to 12 per property. I don't even know how they could possibly enforce all these ordinances.
Toni brought up a good point. How would local government enforce ordinances, such as the number of chickens one can have? What are they going to do? Have bird police? A chicken task force? A pollo Gestapo? People in this part of the country are resilient and independent and don't need or want anyone telling them how to live, and certainly don't need the government's nose in their business. The government doesn't seem to like people they can't control, even if it's something as simple as growing one's own vegetables, raising one's own chickens, or storing rainwater to use during the drier months. Isn't it ironic that self-sufficiency now seems to be a threat, even though originally it was the foundation that helped build this land into the prosperous nation it is today?
I hope you learned a thing or two about what's going on in this region, and it could happen to you in your region depending on where you are. Remember, if you don't fight for the rights you have, you won't have any rights to fight for. Don't forget to give me a like on the video, share, and subscribe. Until next time, this is Rockhopper. I'll see ya.